That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Supercell, the directorial debut of Herbert James Winterstern, which is being released courtesy of Saban Films on March 17th, 2023.
Well, I didn't care for this movie.
This movie is atrocious. There's a parallel universe out there where this movie would be called Indiana Jones El Stormo de Morto, which is Esperanto. But because this film is a GD ripoff of all things Spielberg.
Okay, to start with the positive, I do like how the film looks. And you told me that it won an award for cinematography?
At the Newport Beach Film Festival, yes.
There's some really nice shots.
Yes, cinematographer Andrew Jeric, good job. There's some questionable green screen, not his fault, but yes.
This movie could almost be so bad it's good, but it was really difficult to sit through because the score...
Corey Wallace where is John Williams? He needs to assemble a team of lawyers because this is a ripoff of a John Williams score.
And sure. Not only does it feel like Spielberg, it's unrelenting. Like the entire movie is just this very prominent, familiar score that is so distracting. Mm-hmm. It made it very difficult to sit through. Plus, the audio.
Oh, the ADR is very
specifically for the main character, William, played by
Daniel Diemer,
and Anne Heche, who plays his mom.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Quinn Brody.
They're unintelligible sometimes. It was just really difficult to sit through.
And when you can decipher what is being said, it's bad. It's atrocious. Anna Elizabeth James, who's an actor, director, writer, also was on this script. This script should have been thrown away.
It doesn't help that Anne Heche sounds hoarse. And if she's not chewing gum, she's smoking a cigarette. Sometimes at the same time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's like I can't understand her. Again, the dialogue is not great to begin with, even if I could have heard it. The basic story... It feels like Twister.
It's Indiana Jones meets Twister, yeah.
Because it opens with 10 years prior, the 6-year-old is with his dad, and his dad is like a storm chaser, and we see him go off to follow the Mount Rush or the Mount Everest of tornadoes, I guess, the biggest one ever. And the dad gets killed. So we flash forward 10 years, and now the son
and Anne Heche is on the phone trying to get a hold of him, and she's scrabbling over these maps like it's going to do something.
The opening scene was funny, because, Anne Heche looking crazy on the walkie-talkie trying to tell him which route to take to get away from the tornado. But anyway, we flash forward 10 years, and now his son, William Brody Jr., is 16. He looks 20. And even in the film, twice or 3 times, we reference, how big he is.
Yeah, the script, what's your mom feeding you?
And his voice is very deep, and it just isn't very clear. But anyway, he and his mom are living together. And the mom, who was a PhD, now wants to be as far away from, tornado chasing as possible. So she works as a housekeeper.
She works with her son as cleaning houses like the guys in House Party.
Yeah, basically.
That's the second opening of the film.
However, the kid, Billy, he wants to follow in his dad's footsteps. So he's very knowledgeable about storms, and his entire room is covered in stuff about storms.
Storm stuff.
One day, he gets a package in the mail. They live in Florida, and he gets a package from Texas. Mm-hmm. And it's his dad's journal, which is very Indiana Jones.
It's very much like the Sean Connery journal as Indiana Jones' dad in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Yeah.
And this fool somehow, I don't know how, I'm still confused about it, how the 16-year-old gets from Florida to Texas.
Yeah, he's just there.
He goes to the address that the package came from.
You're like, why is Skeet Ulrich in walking distance?
Yeah, because he goes to visit his uncle, who's not really his uncle. It's one of his dad's buddies.
Ex-partner from the Brody Storm Labs.
Brody,
of course, notably is the name of the family in Jaws.
Oh. So this director really likes Spielberg, I guess. But he goes to see his uncle, And Skeet Ulrich is not happy to see this boy. He pulls out a gun on him.
He has a gun point blank at his head.
And tells him, like, you need to go back home. You can't come with me. I'll kill you. And then, of course, lets him go with him. So Skeet Ulrich's character works for Brody Storm Tours, which is a company based off of Brody Storm Labs, which the kid's dad ran. But Skeet doesn't own the business. Alec Baldwin does.
Who's playing a man named Zane Rogers.
And he's a problem because he's just trying to capitalize on
the good Brody name.
The good Brody name, because apparently he's famous in the storm chasing world. So the bulk of the film is the kid, William, is like along for the ride on this storm chasing tour. And of course they get hemmed up by a storm. So some things happen, but of course it all culminates with this massive storm. But in parallel to all that, Anne Heche, the kid's mom, she has to go find her son, and she realizes that he's with Skeet Ulrich. So she has to drive from Florida to Texas. But her car doesn't work. So her kid's girlfriend, whose name is
Harper Hunter.
This girl has a car.
Played by Jordan Christine Simon.
So the girlfriend and Anne Heche drive across like 3 states to go find him. And of course, when they intercept, there's the big storm. Alec Baldwin gets sucked into a tornado like the cow from Twister.
Mm-hmm. Or is it Alfred Woodard in The Forgotten?
Yes. And then all's well that ends well. Man, I have so many notes. I probably can't even get through them. It's just like... there are moments when I feel like it could have been over the top to a point where it would have been fun.
Which I guess is an argument for Twister, which is also terrible.
But I think Alec Baldwin's well, first of all, this director really lucked out because he cast 2 people who were in the news quite heavily in recent times because, of course, Anne Heche died and Alec Baldwin was charged with murder, which I think has been dropped maybe. But so that's interesting. But Alec Baldwin is just doing the same, and I really like him, but he's doing the same thing he's done in every film for the last like 15 years.
I don't mind Alec Baldwin, but you need to stop having children because is that the reason you're doing these films? I don't know why you would want...
Anne Heche, I mean, I don't mean to speak ill of the dead, but she seems crazy in this movie. First of all, my biggest issue, besides not being able to hear what she's saying because she's always chewing gum, smoking cigarettes while she's hoarse, is that when she realizes her son is missing, she calls the police. They tell her, like, well, we need to wait another whatever hours to file a report. She decides to hop in her car and drive to Texas.
Well, she gets a call for she gets a hold of Skeet.
Because she realizes where he is. And her car doesn't work.
Because she looks in his garbage and sees the
package, the envelope. So her car doesn't work. So then that's when the girlfriend gives her a ride. But it's like, so first of all, you hopped in a car to drive across 4 states and you didn't pack an overnight bag?
With a minor?
And then you decide to take this minor across state lines. But Anne Heche is wearing her housekeeping uniform the entire movie.
She is.
That drove me crazy.
She sure is.
It drove me crazy. Getting back to the cool shots, I do think there are a lot of cool shots, like wide shots of like the horizon, and then we see like a lightning flash. I thought that was really well done shots of a storm. Even when they're driving in the car, I thought that looked good. But you mentioned something that I think might be true, which is maybe they ran out of money in post-production because that ADR is terrible. And some of the CGI, not all of it, looks pretty crunchy.
The CGI is bad, yeah. But
so it feels like they ran out of steam.
But as a film, it conjured that energy of kind of early 90s filmmaking. Almost.
Well, speaking of Spielberg references, when the kid is like Googling his dad, because he's Googling like Bill, the first thing that pops up is Bill Paxton, who was in Twister, right?
Which Spielberg did not direct.
No, but it's a reference to that. Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry. But then referencing Twister is what I was saying. The machine, because in Twister they're trying to get the machine with the balls that get into the tornado, and in this movie they have the Brody sonic alarm, which is this device with headphones that I didn't understand what it does. We do see at the end the kid takes this machine with the headphones, and this fool like walks right into the tornado. I don't know what they're supposed to hear. And if it's similar to Twister, where it's like, oh, if we can hear the storm coming, we have a few extra minutes to warn people. But I thought that was silly.
Yeah.
Right?
To say the least.
Then when, of course, Anne Heche is very upset that her son has her dead husband's journal, his dad's journal. And then he starts screaming, like, this is the best chance we have to understand Dad. But I thought, like...
Is that the scene where she also says, I gave up field work for you?
Also, why did this woman who was a scientist with a PhD, like...
Dr. Quinn, yeah.
Like, how do you go from that to housekeeping, which is also honest work, but it's like, there were a lot of jobs in between you could have done. You could have taught at community college down the road. You could have been a meteorologist.
Yeah, it's like, do you have your student loans paid off? Because you're not going to do it if you're being a maid. Because the Brody labs went bankrupt, we're told. So, but it's like you couldn't find anything else to do in Florida?
The minute the kid approaches his uncle, Skeet Ulrich, the first thing out of his mouth is like, don't tell me you're here to be a storm chaser. Oh my God, that entire scene was terrible.
Poor Skeet, who, if you were hungry to see him after the vestige of him in Scream 6, he does look good.
He looks good, better than in Scream 6. But I was still confused, like, why did you send him the journal then? And they do have a conversation, but I wasn't satisfied with it. Like, yeah.
No, if Jeffrey Dean Morgan is the poor man's Harrison Ford, then Skeet Ulrich is kind of like the poor man's Jeffrey Dean Morgan as well.
Who's the kid who plays the kid?
Oh, Daniel Diemer.
He looks like if you mix Matthew Lawrence with Will Poulter.
I was thinking also a little Tommy Lee Jones. Like
young Tommy Lee
Tommy
Jones.
Yeah.
He's a handsome kid. Mm-hmm. He does not look 16.
No.
His voice is too damn deep too. It was very distracting. Then there's a scene when we first go on the tour where they're attacked by a storm and Alec Baldwin says, like, you've just experienced gorilla hail. The way Alec is talking about this business, they can't be making money. Like, because there are how many people on the initial tour? Like 5?
There are a couple. And Red Bull is also featured heavily in this
Bull's
film.
featured heavily.
Red Bull and cigarettes. But their little truck gets destroyed by this hail. And it's like, you don't have a storm chasing business without like an armored tank
Like
truck.
a reinforced vehicle?
How is this not reinforced glass?
It looks like they took like a U-Haul van and just like painted Brody on the side.
You can't handle hail.
But there's no way the money they got from those 5 people riding in the van even covered the deductible to pay for the damage to that truck.
And then Skeet Ulrich pulls out merch that's in like a plastic
like bin.
And the people on the tour are like, no, your stuff's too expensive.
So how much did you pay for this tour?
He's got his merch like a drag queen at a drag show.
Yes.
Like, I'm gonna sell this after.
Like
after
Jackie
Saturday,
B
like
on
Jackie
Sunday
B.
brunch holding us hostage for tips and to buy her pins. Shout out to Jackie B. Yeah, the way Alec's character's talking about the Brady Storm Chaser tour business is like it's a multi-million-dollar business. He's making dozens of dollars a day at the most.
And also, Alec Baldwin's casting. You had a good point that this person should be falling apart at the seams.
I thought, what's his name, Goggins?
You thought Walton Goggins. I thought maybe somebody more decrepit like Steve Railsback.
Someone more grisly and desperate needed to play this. Alec Baldwin just serving face and reciting these lines and the way he recites everything felt like... I mean, I guess if you're like a first-time filmmaker with a small budget and you can get Alec Baldwin, sure, but...
There's a scene where Alec is, I think, drunk and bonding in a hotel room.
There's a scene, yeah, where he has some other storm chaser guys because they're all following the storm, so they all end up at the same motel. And the kid William like walks into a random room with an open door,
yeah.
And these guys are drinking and they start talking crazy about his dad because they don't know he's the son.
He's Bill Brody's kid.
And then Alec walks in like, you don't know who you're talking to, and then they kind of bond at that point.
No, but then Zane Rogers starts telling stories about Dr. Quinn and how they used to call her Mama Bear because there's this other thing, this contraption called the bear cage, the apparatus when you're in the middle of the store.
Like a Shark Tank?
Oh my God.
Okay, a good scene that's also ridiculous is they're driving the tour van and they stop at a gas station. And William, the kid, gets out to get snacks.
Billy the kid?
Billy the kid gets out to get some snacks or something, and he's taking too long. And instead of going in to tell him, like, bring your ass on, Alec's like, you gotta leave him. Because Skeet's driving. And Skeet's like, no, we can wait. He's like, no, I'm going to fire you if you don't leave right now. So they leave. And then the kid working in the convenience store is like, well, don't worry about the storm, because if it was coming here, all the chasers would still be here. And that's when Billy the Kid is like, shit. And he realizes they left him.
He doesn't even give that response. He's eating his cheesy popcorn out in the parking lot of that gas station. Is just like, oh.
And then immediately the tornado comes, and the convenience store kid locks the door, puts the clothes sign up. So Billy the Kid has to run into like a phone booth.
You can see this damn kid in the parking lot.
And has to weather out the tornado in like a phone booth. I did think that looked great, but then as soon as, like, immediately when the tornado is done and Skeet decides to turn the van back around, a news crew is there.
And then Alec pops in, interrupting the newscast.
A news crew is interviewing Billy the Kid, like, wow, you weathered through a tornado. You're the son of the famous Bill Brady. And then Alec pops in like, oh, well, he's affiliated with Brady Storm Tours, and then Skeet punches Alec, whatever. But that energy would have worked for me. Oh my God. It just, I don't know.
And then they go to a diner where they're all, a very full diner.
A completely full diner. And when they walk in, everyone slow claps because I guess Billy the Kid is famous because he was on the local news. And then there's a super crunchy scene. Bless this actress's heart. But the waiter at the table, when she walks up, she asks Skeet, like, are we going to be okay? And he's like, well, where do you live? Well, I'm just down the road, but my sister lives up in blah, 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 blah. And he's like, well, you better tell her to find shelter. That was so dumb.
Don't you all know this drill
Don't you all
already?
people live in Tornado Alley? Don't you know?
There's a killer coming towards me. What should I do? Well, I guess just stand there and get butchered then, because it's so stupid. And then in that scene, they take the time to detail that both these people order huevos rancheros, and then we actually show the order of 2 orders of huevos rancheros. It's like, you keep up with those details, but not in any other regard in this stupid movie.
That scene in the diner is also when Heche catches up with Skeet Ulrich, but Billy the Kid is left with Alec Baldwin. And they're on another tour with these 2 Indian guys who look like very preppy businessmen. Mm-hmm. They are very well put together, don't know what they're doing in Texas and why they're on the Storm Chaser tour. And then, of course, the tour goes bad.
One of them doesn't speak English, but knows who Bill Brody is.
Ridiculous.
The Dalai Lama of storm chasing.
They use that phrase. Then, as the road gets bumpy, they're like, why is it so bumpy? Like, aren't you chasing tornadoes? What do you expect? But before we get there, Anne is yelling at Skeet, and Skeet tells her about her son, you can't put a collar on a no-collar dog.
Yeah, he does say that.
That took me out.
And expect him to be happy.
Who wrote this?
Anna Elizabeth James and Herbert James Winterstern wrote this.
Then there's a scene where the van, of course, gets stuck right as the final tornado is coming towards them. So Alec Baldwin has to get out of the van and push it. And I thought that scene of what's supposed to be Alec Baldwin pushing the van out of the mud was funny. Mm-hmm. And then that's when he gets sucked into the tornado. But of course, after that, everyone's trying to find shelter because now Anne Heche, Billy the Kid's girlfriend, Billy the Kid, Skeet Ulrich, they're all there. The tornado's coming. And I didn't know this made sense, but they all jump into a pool. Mm-hmm. Because apparently I feel like that's worse, but okay. And then the van. There were moments when the tornado's blowing cars over, mm-hmm. but the people standing right next to the car don't fall down.
Just there. Mm-hmm.
And then they jump into the pool, and then we see the tornado throws the van into the pool. I thought that looked cool.
Again, there were things that looked cool about it, but that is saying very little, and nothing else was well attenuated whatsoever, including casting.
That being said, I would let this director direct a film for me, but he couldn't write it, and he couldn't cast it. But I feel like he and the cinematographer, they have an eye for what looks nice.
Mm-hmm, sure. But however, I thought this was worse than Geostorm.
Yeah.
And I think it's...
Well, Geostorm had a budget too, so it looks better.
True. Would I watch that again, or would I?
I did watch Geostorm again.
I don't want to. There was another tornado movie Anne Heche had towards the end there called 13 Minutes, I think, that I haven't seen, but I don't know.
What would you give this movie?
I think I'm being very generous in giving it 1 star.
I'm giving it 1 out of 5 because it was really hard to sit through because of the score and the audio. Anything else?
No.
Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.